Gĩikaro gĩkĩ gĩtabanĩtio nĩ mũikarĩri gĩtĩ wa kamĩtĩ ya ithurano na mĩhaka Iebc Wafula Chebukati nĩguo kwarĩrĩria njĩra cia kwarĩra mĩtaratara mĩrũmu ya gũtabania gĩthurano kĩnene gĩũkĩte na makĩria gĩturwa kĩa president kũrĩa kĩrĩ na ahũranĩri ana. Arĩa magwĩkinyĩtie mũcemanio-inĩ ũcio nĩ marĩkĩtie kũhetũkio nĩ kamĩtĩ ya Iebc nĩ Raila Odinga, ũndũ ũmwe na mũnini wake Martha Karua kuma ngwatanĩro-inĩ ya Azimio la Umoja, William Ruto ngwatanĩro-inĩ ya Kenya Kwanza, Professor George Wajakoya wa kĩama kĩa Root Party, ũndũ ũmwe na David Waihiga Mwaũre wa kĩama kĩa Ngano Party, na kũrĩa makorirwo magĩtambũrũkia mendekithia mao kũrĩ kamĩtĩ ĩyo. Kamĩtĩ ya Iebc ĩkĩranĩra kũnyitanĩra na ahũranĩri iturwa aya nĩguo gũtigĩrĩra nĩ matabania gĩthurano kĩrĩ na ũma na waragania guothe bũrũri-inĩ, kuona nĩ meharĩrĩirie na kũrĩa makorirwo magĩtarĩria ũrĩa mĩtambo ya kĩrĩu ĩgatũmĩka harĩ gũtambũra aikia a kura na oho kuga kũrĩ na ũgitĩri wa kũigana.
We all agree that we are the digital highway is the place we are going. We support your commitment to the electronic register. We are trying to move our parties to also have nominations like our competitors using an electronic register. So I think that's the direction we want to go. There has been notions that are not correct, that Kenya Kwanza wants a manual register. We do not want a manual register. If you give us sufficient safeguards that an electronic register will function without any chance of failure, then we are good. And finally, I was amazed at the number of staff, permanent staff, Iebc have. 800, in the region of 800 plus. Mr. Chairman, that's a very huge resource which Kenyans pay for. You should consider in future deploying that resource to help us with nominations in parties. I think really there should be a consideration because it's a national resource and they shouldn't be waiting to just run the elections. They can also help us run nominations in our parties with the expertise they have. In any case, Mr. Chairman, a democratic election will be heavily informed by the kind of nominations we do. If the nominations are not democratic, you end up with elections that are not democratic. So I think going forward, you should consider as Iebc working with political parties so that we can leverage more on the resource you have, which is a public resource, to assist grow political parties as institutions of governance. That because I believe that the strength of a democracy is dependent on the strength of the democratic institutions, including political parties that exist. We have no problem with any Kenyan serving in any capacity, so long as they have been recruited competitively and they have the requisite skills and competencies. We have absolutely no preference for any Kenyan from any community. And if our competitors have a problem with certain Kenyans who come from certain communities, you can work out with them. We have no problem if they are replaced. But we want every Kenyan to be given a chance, and the measure should not be ethnicity, the measure should be competence, whether they are competent to do whatever it is that they are doing. I am on record, Mr. Chairman, saying that even if my competitor's brother was the chairman of Iebc, I would have no problem, so long as he is competitively recruited. Thank you very much.
Chair, we have noted with concern that there is a great tribal imbalance, ethnic imbalance in the composition of those returning officers. If you want the details, Chair, Kenya is a country that is made up of at least 50 communities, diverse communities. But when it comes to the returning officers at the county level, 10, nearly 10, because there are 8 from one community. And that community has a presidential candidate in this election. By comparison, the next community that has a candidate in this election at the top level only has 4 returning officers at the county level. Chair, we have also noted that at the constituency level, when it comes to returning officers and deputy returning officers, we are talking about 290 plus 290, 580. Out of 580 key personnel at the constituency level, we have nearly 100 from one community. I have the figures.
Can we answer?
Yes, I have the figures. I have the data. I have compared, even with the strength of these communities when it comes to the population of the country.
The issues that have been raised by my colleague here, Mr. Saitabao, about the ethnic imbalance in the commission, these are not, light issues that should be taken lightly. I think you'll be providing, evidence of the questions he's raising. I hear what the Deputy President is saying, that he has no issue with Kenyans. And of course, we do not have issues with the Kenyans. But I think that the principle of inclusivity requires, as our Constitution dictates, that public bodies be representative, that they represent the people of Kenya and represent the face of Kenya. I think we've seen some discrepancies. I agree again with the Deputy President that merit is important. But our Constitution also dictates that we look at other vectors of identity, such as region, such as gender, such as disability. All these factors are important when you are constituting a public body like this one. So I think, we shall be giving you the information that we have, and we hope to dialogue with you. We do not want to assume bad faith until we get your answers. The Russians say trust but verify. So we are trusting first, but then we'll verify after we get your responses.
KPMG audit of the register, the gaps that were identified, we'll want to know them in the spirit of the transparency of the electoral process, both before, during, and after. We'd like to know what those gaps were and whether they have been addressed satisfactorily, because that is very critical. Secondly, if we could even have a copy of that report, because I think they're auditing a public process. It should not be a secret. It should be available even to the media so that we know what gaps exist, when they will be addressed, and so forth and so on. Number 2, Mr. Chairman, with regard to the loading of the data into the KIEMS, I don't know at what point the agents of the various parties will be allowed to at least, I know it's a huge process, transferring the manual register into the KIEMS and loading the KIEMS is a very huge and burdensome process, but the agents of the candidates can be allowed to at least sample or have access to that process, again, just for assurances that everything is okay, so that we are sure whatever is being loaded electronically is consistent with what would be available manually.
Returning officers and presiding officers curtail excessively communication, so that even if there is a problem, we don't get to know about it. And I'll give an example of the Msabweni by-election, where we had serious problems communicating with the agents on the ground, because the returning officer becomes are powered by presiding officer, are powered by themselves. You cannot make the phone call, you cannot do this. Why are they agents? How do we know when something goes wrong if presiding officers develop their own rules on the ground? Finally, on the issue of mass transfers, we are dissatisfied with the vague answer that was given about the 3 officers and the action being taken. The reason being that one of the cabinet secretaries had said publicly to one of the presidential candidates that they know their work and they are doing their work. Could this cabinet secretary be one of the 3 people at an investigation? Thank you.
We will also want you to make assurance not only to us but also to the public that the public portal will be accessible even when many Kenyans are logging in. I think we need that assurance that information will be available at any particular time. And of course, I know the Commission has asked parties to have 1 agent in a polling station. We are asking you allow candidates also that are going to be in this election to be able to have agents to represent them in the various polling stations where voters will be voting.
Which form exactly are you going to be using for tallying the presidential result? We have the form 34A and we have the form 34B. And supposing the form 34B has an error and is not indicative of what happened at the polling center, the form 34A, which forms are you going to tally the presidential vote? If you can clarify that, that is important. Assume in a worst case scenario that form 34B has an error. It has not captured exactly what was captured at the tallying center, at the polling center. Will the parties have an opportunity now that we would have taken photographic image of the form 34A? Will we have an opportunity to relay information to you so that if during the transmission there is a problem with what is being transmitted, it's exactly different from what was the real form from form 34A? What is the Commission going to do? Without overemphasizing what has been raised by Professor Kindiki on the Electoral Code of Conduct that was signed by all candidates. Chairman, we did a letter to you complaining about Jacaranda. You did respond to us, but through the media. Our concern is this. Candidates are tweeting and saying they're the ones who are in control of certain chaos that have been meted out in places like Jacaranda. Why wouldn't the Commission take action against such candidates, including suspending or expelling them or removing them completely from the race? That is the only way you can send a message. We still don't have a satisfactory answer from your end.
We recruited our staff, some of them as far back as 2012. They are all permanent and pensionable staff of the Commission. In 2017, when there were by-elections all over, the Commission had a disciplinary process, having called all returning officers that had issues in their constituencies. We dealt with them. And the reason why we moved away from temporary arrows is because we want people who are on permanent and pensionable terms, who in the event something happens, they have a lot more to lose than just the 2-3 months they are hired. If you go to Bomas of Kenya today, there are 890 personnel of Iebc on full permanent and pensionable terms. They are the ones who are going to oversee the election. They oversaw the election in 2017 and in 2013. Let's not politicize the staff of Iebc. We are only recruiting temporary deputy constituency returning officer, one position. We have a permanent returning officer on permanent and pensionable terms, recruited in the manner I described earlier. And we have a permanent and pensionable deputy returning officer. So we are having an additional one that is temporary, so that we have in every constituency 1 returning officer and 2 deputy returning officers, one of them being temporary. And the temporary returning officer deals mostly with only logistical arrangements and not results. At the county level, we have a full-time, permanent, and pensionable county returning officer. What we have only done is to give him 1 temporary assistant to help him in the process. But at his disposal is a county ICT, a county accountant, and a county supply chain. So the issue of tribalizing IEBC or balkanizing into one of the 43 ethnic tribes does not arise. We are not a tribal institution. We are a national institution undertaking a national mandate. And our focus is purely on that.
The result is Form 34A. That's the result we are going to use. That's the result the National Returning Officer will be tabulating to ensure that whatever is in 34B corresponds with 34A. The result at polling station is final and cannot be changed. If there are errors, we shall note the errors. We have created an error form, and that form then will be shared with the court. If there's any petition in the Supreme Court, the results will be submitted together with the error forms. What we are saying this time round is, candidates, please have your agents at polling stations. Agents get copies of the results, and you can then share with whoever is managing the candidates. And when we meet at Bomas or at the National Tallying Center, let us then compare notes. The commission will have the results. If you have any issue with the end of the results, point it out. The agents will have, the commission will have, the media will be having those results, so that we move this process smoothly. And the commission has result forms, will be printed. Our result forms also have security features. So don't bring us any form. It's a serialized, it's printed. We shall only look at the forms which we know are genuine forms. So don't bring us a form which doesn't belong to the commission.
IEBC recruits personnel in this manner. When there is a constituency position, the recruitment is locked to the constituency. There are 290 constituencies in Kenya, which therefore means recruitment is based at the constituency level. The DRO, the Deputy Returning Officer, the Returning Officer are both recruited, and their ID must read they come from born and brought up in, or born in that constituency. This is to ensure we have the face of Kenya in the commission. When we have a county position, because we devolved our functions in 2017 when we came to office ourselves, we started the county manager position. The first criteria for employing somebody as a county manager or a county accountant or a county ICT or county supply chain is your ID must read that county. The commission has moved away from using temporary returning officers more than a decade ago. For anyone to insinuate we have just recruited ROs based on skewed tribal affiliation is misleading and wrong.